You walk into any hardware store today and you pick up a stepladder covered in warning labels.
Oh, yeah. Like neon yellow stickers everywhere.
Right. Or you buy a cup of coffee at a drive-thru and the cup explicitly warns you in bold print that the hot liquid inside is, well, that it's hot.
Which you'd think is obvious, but yeah.
Exactly. We live in this era of just absolute hypervigilance. Consumer products are wrapped in neon tape to protect us from even the most, remote statistical dangers.
Right.
But then you look at a substance that is a universally recognized group 1 carcinogen.
Yeah.
A substance that actively shrinks the human brain, fundamentally corrupts the liver's metabolic pathways, and is literally a leading cause of premature death globally.
And 0 warning labels.
0. Not only does it lack those neon warning labels, but it's given this billion-dollar marketing budget. It's tied to every major sporting event.
Oh, for sure.
And it's presented to you as the absolute pinnacle of sophistication, relaxation, and, romance.
The paradox of that is staggering. I mean, we view it purely through the lens of human biology. It's wild.
It really is.
We have these legally mandated, massive public health campaigns for almost every other systemic health risk.
Right, like tobacco or seatbelts.
Exactly. Yet we have this collective blind spot for a compound that directly targets our central nervous system. The societal narrative is it's so loud that it completely drowns out the actual physiology.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because our mission today for this deep dive is to turn the volume all the way down on that cultural narrative.
I love that.
And we want to turn the microscope up on the actual biology.
Yeah.
We are working off a stack of really compelling sources today, and it's heavily anchored by a recent transcript from the Ultimate Human podcast featuring Gary Brecka, which took a really hard, unvarnished look at alcohol.
And it's such an important look, too.
It really is. And to be clear to you, listening right now, our goal here is not to preach.
No, not at all.
We aren't here to judge how you unwind on a Friday night or, to cast some moral shadow over a glass of champagne at a wedding.
Because that doesn't help anyone.
Right. We are here to explore the mechanics. We want to pull back the curtain on the actual verifiable science of what ethanol does to the human machine.
From the immediate effects to the long-term ones.
Exactly. From the immediate neurological fog to the cellular mutations, and ultimately the biological regeneration that happens when you step away.
Because providing that mechanical view it's really the only way to genuinely empower someone.
How do you mean?
I mean, when you rely on the cultural story, you are essentially operating on marketing.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But when you understand the biochemistry, like how a molecule actually interacts with your cellular receptors, your endocrine system, your DNA, you can finally make decisions based on your baseline physiological health.
Because you actually have the facts.
Right. And the mechanics of alcohol in the body are deeply complex, highly disruptive, and honestly, they're fascinating. Once you look past the standard, it gives you a hangover summary.
Well, let's start exactly there, the morning after.
The classic hangover.
Right. Before we get into the decades-long accumulation of cellular damage, we need to look at what is happening inside the human body, say, 12 hours after consumption.
Yeah.
Because we all know the feeling, the headache, the dry mouth, that heavy, sluggish fatigue.
Just dragging yourself out of bed.
Exactly. And we tend to brush it off as the cost of doing business, right? But the biological cascade causing that feeling is actually a major disruption of our endocrine system.
It's massive.
Yeah.
We really need to look at a very specific hormone produced in the hypothalamus.
Okay.
And it's stored in the posterior pituitary gland. It's called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH.
ADH, okay.
Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as vasopressin. Now, under normal baseline conditions, ADH is constantly regulating your blood osmolarity.
Meaning how concentrated your blood is.
Exactly. It travels down to your kidneys and binds to these specific receptors. And those receptors control structures called aquaporins.
Aquaporins.
Right, which are essentially just tiny water channels. ADH tells those channels to stay open and reabsorb water back into the bloodstream.
Okay, so it pulls the water back in before it can leave the body.
Yes. And that is what keeps your blood volume stable, your electrolytes balanced, and your cellular environment optimal.
So it's essentially an automated, closed-loop hydration management system.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
The brain senses we need water, it releases the hormone, and the kidneys dutifully lock the water inside the body.
And that closed loop is absolutely critical for survival. But the introduction of ethanol acts as a chemical override.
It breaks the loop.
It shatters it.
Yeah.
Because alcohol molecules actually cross the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
and they actively interfere with the voltage-gated calcium channels in the pituitary gland.
Wow.
Yeah. So by blocking those channels, alcohol directly suppresses the release of ADH. The hormone simply stops flowing to the kidneys.
So to use an analogy, it's like ADH is a nightclub bouncer, right? And his job is to keep the water safely inside the club.
I like that, yeah.
But alcohol basically fires the bouncer,
Yes.
which means the aquaporins in the kidneys don't get the signal to reabsorb the water. The doors are just left wide open, and the water floods out the door.
Exactly. You go into diuretic overdrive.
So we aren't just failing to hydrate, we are chemically forcing our body to drain its own essential reserves.
You end up excreting a significantly higher volume of liquid than you ingested.
Hence the constant trips to the bathroom when you're drinking.
Right. But the critical piece here, and a lot of people miss this isn't just the loss of water. Because water doesn't leave the body alone.
What does it take with it?
It takes essential electrolytes: sodium, potassium, magnesium.
Oh, wow.
And these are the very ions that your neurons use to fire action potentials.
So it's messing with the brain's electrical system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you deplete them, you aren't just thirsty. You're literally altering the electrochemical gradient of your entire nervous system.
And that leads right into the cognitive fog.
Yes.
Because the source material emphasizes that this diuretic overdrive doesn't just make you physically tired, it measurably impairs cognitive function for up to 24 hours.
Which is huge.
Right. And if we are altering that electrochemical gradient, it makes total sense that the brain can't perform.
It's a combination of things, really. It's that electrolyte depletion plus neuroinflammation and the lingering metabolic byproducts of the alcohol itself.
All hitting the brain at once.
Yeah. And functional MRI studies are super clear on this. They show that in the 24 hours following even moderate consumption, there's a marked decrease in blood flow and metabolic activity in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for executive function, decision-making, focus.
Right.
And the hippocampus is the center for memory formation and learning.
Exactly. So the physiological reality of that morning after sluggishness, it's not just a feeling. It's a literal, measurable reduction in your brain's processing power.
That's terrifying.
Your reaction times are delayed, your working memory is compromised, and your ability to synthesize new information drops significantly.
And this lasts how long?
Up to 24 hours. Long after your blood alcohol content has returned to absolute zero.
Okay, I want to run the math on this because it feels incredibly consequential for someone's daily life.
Let's do it.
If the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus are demonstrably impaired for 24 hours after moderate consumption, what happens to the person who has, say, 1 or 2 glasses of wine with dinner every single night?
What's fascinating here is, fascinating in a dark way, the pharmacokinetic reality of that routine is that the brain never reaches its true baseline.
Wait, never?
Never. If the recovery phase requires a full 24 hours to clear the neuroinflammation and rebalance that electrolyte gradient,
Right.
and you reintroduce the chemical disruptor at hour 24.
You just restart the clock.
Exactly. You are perpetually operating in a state of cognitive deficit.
That is a staggering thought.
It really changes how you view a harmless daily habit.
Right, because a massive portion of the population might have absolutely no idea what their actual 100% cognitive capacity even feels like.
They've completely forgotten.
They just assume the brain fog, the slight irritability, the mid-afternoon energy crash.
Yeah.
They assume all of that is just the reality of aging or the stress of their job or just their natural disposition.
Yeah, we normalize the deficit. People build their entire professional and personal lives around an artificially lowered baseline.
Wow.
And then what do? They drink caffeine all day to fight the sluggishness caused by the alcohol from the night before.
Right, the endless cups of coffee.
And then they use the alcohol in the evening to fight the anxiety and the jitters caused by the caffeine.
It is a biological seesaw.
A seesaw that never, ever allows the central nervous system to actually find homeostasis.
And while the brain is struggling to find that homeostasis, the rest of the body is fighting a massive metabolic fire.
Oh, big time.
Because that 24-hour fog isn't just a waiting game. It's the byproduct of the body attempting to clear a toxin. Which brings us to the body's primary filtration system, the liver.
The hardest working organ.
Right. And based on the sources, what alcohol does to the liver's natural processes is completely counterintuitive.
But understand the damage. We really have to look at the enzymatic pathways because the liver is this extraordinary organ. It's responsible for over 500 vital functions.
500? That's insane.
Right. Things like gluconeogenesis, which keeps your blood sugar stable, and lipid metabolism, processing fats.
Okay.
But it is also your primary defense against bloodborne toxins. So when ethanol enters the bloodstream, the liver recognizes it as an acute threat.
Like an alarm goes off.
Exactly. And it essentially drops all of its other critical functions to prioritize metabolizing the alcohol.
So if the liver is a high-end municipal water treatment plant, it's like it shuts down the day-to-day operations of purifying the town's water to deal with this massive emergency spill.
It has to. It has no choice. But the way it processes the ethanol is where the real biological danger lies.
How so?
Well, the liver produces an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase.
Okay.
This enzyme strips hydrogen atoms from the ethanol molecule,
Right.
and it converts it into a completely new compound called acetaldehyde.
Okay, I'm pausing here because this mechanism is where the logic seems to just break down for me.
I know exactly what you're going to ask.
Right, like we ingest a toxin, ethanol. The liver's job is to protect us from toxins. But to get rid of the ethanol, it suddenly starts synthesizing acetaldehyde,
Yes.
which the data points out is significantly more toxic, more reactive, and more damaging than the ethanol itself.
Yep.
Wait, so our body's natural defense mechanism to get rid of alcohol actually requires it to create an even more toxic substance in the process. Why would our evolutionary defense mechanism create a worse poison just to clear the first one?
It's an enzymatic bottleneck. The liver doesn't want to keep the acetaldehyde.
Okay, that's a relief.
Right. The design of the pathway relies on a second enzyme called aldehyde dehydrogenase, or ALDH.
ALDH, got it.
And ALDH is supposed to quickly grab that toxic acetaldehyde and convert it into a benign substance called acetate.
Which is harmless.
Exactly. Acetate can then be safely excreted as just water and carbon dioxide.
Okay, so it's a two-step process.
Yes. And in an ideal, purely theoretical scenario involving a tiny trace amount of ethanol, this two-step process happens smoothly.
But nobody's drinking purely theoretical trace amounts of ethanol.
And that is the crux of the issue.
Yeah.
When you consume a standard alcoholic beverage, let alone several,
Or a whole bottle of wine.
right, you rapidly overwhelm the liver supply of that second enzyme, ALDH.
So the second step can't happen fast enough.
Exactly. The first enzyme keeps churning out this highly toxic acetaldehyde, but the second enzyme can't clear it. So the acetaldehyde spills over.
Oh, no.
It accumulates in the liver tissue, and it leaks out into the general bloodstream.
Okay, so what exactly makes acetaldehyde so much more dangerous? The sources describe it causing chronic inflammation and fatty liver, but what is the actual cellular mechanism of that damage?
Acetaldehyde is what chemists call a highly electrophilic molecule,
Meaning what?
meaning it is chemically unstable and desperately seeks out electrons to stabilize itself.
Okay.
So as it circulates, it literally attacks the proteins, the lipids, and the nucleic acids in your healthy cells to steal their electrons.
Wow.
This process generates massive amounts of oxidative stress and free radicals.
So it is aggressively dismantling the cellular structures around it just to stabilize its own chemical structure.
That's exactly it. It fundamentally alters the proteins it binds to, creating what are called adducts.
The adducts, okay.
Yes, and when acetaldehyde binds to the proteins in the liver specifically, it impairs the liver's ability to export fat.
Wait, the liver exports fat?
Normally, yes. The liver packages fats into lipoproteins to send them out to the body to be used, but the acetaldehyde damages that packaging machinery.
So the fat has nowhere to go.
Right. As a result, the fat gets trapped inside the liver cells. This is the direct mechanical cause of steatosis, which is commonly known as fatty liver disease.
Which the data highlights as a major precursor to cirrhosis and outright liver failure.
Yes.
So the liver is literally choking on the fat it can no longer export because it's too busy fighting the molecular fires started by the acetaldehyde.
It's completely overwhelmed.
And because the liver is dropping its other jobs to handle this crisis, everything else in the body's metabolism just gets destabilized. Blood sugar regulation fails, fat burning stops completely.
Right, because the metabolic priority is purely survival and clearance at that point.
That makes sense.
And as long as that toxic acetaldehyde is circulating, the collateral damage continues to spread far beyond the liver. The cardiovascular system, the gastrointestinal tract, the immune system, they are all just bathed in this highly reactive electron-sealing compound.
Which brings us to the most sobering, pardon the pun, revelation in this entire deep dive.
Yeah, this part is heavy.
Because if we have a highly reactive molecule circulating through the bloodstream, mutating proteins and causing severe oxidative stress, we have the perfect biological environment for cellular mutation.
Yes, we do.
And that bridges the gap to the carcinogen connection. The source material is very, very clear. Alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen.
And the classification of a group 1 carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer is not handed out lightly.
It's the highest tier, right?
No is the highest tier. It means there is sufficient unequivocal evidence establishing a direct causal link between the substance and cancer in humans.
Wow.
It shares this classification with asbestos, plutonium, and tobacco smoke.
See, when you put it in that context, it feels almost surreal.
It does.
I mean, you would never intentionally ingest asbestos.
No.
Or take a casual hit of plutonium to, unwind on a Friday night.
Exactly.
Yet the data shows alcohol is the 3rd leading risk factor for cancer overall, trailing only behind smoking and obesity. And it contributes to nearly 70,000 cancer cases in the U.S. annually.
It's a massive public health issue.
And the cancers linked to it are brutal, mouth, throat, esophagus, colon, liver, and breast cancer. I want to drill down into the mechanics again here. How exactly does this liquid translate into a physical tumor?
It goes right back to that highly reactive molecule, acetaldehyde. We talked about how it binds to proteins to create adducts, right?
Right.
Well, it also binds directly to human DNA.
Oh, wow.
When acetaldehyde enters a cell, it attaches itself to the DNA strands, forming what are called DNA adducts. These are physical, bulky attachments that interfere with the DNA replication machinery.
Like throwing a wrench into a highly calibrated printing press.
That is a very apt visualization.
Yeah.
So when the cell attempts to divide and copy its DNA, the machinery hits that acetaldehyde adduct and it makes a mistake.
It misprints.
Exactly. It inserts the wrong base pair or it skips a section entirely. These are genetic mutations.
But doesn't the body have ways to fix those?
Normally, yes. Our bodies have built-in DNA repair mechanisms to fix these errors. But here is the truly insidious part of alcohol consumption.
Okay.
It simultaneously depletes the body's primary antioxidant, glutathione, and it impairs the absorption of vital nutrients like folate, which are absolutely essential for DNA repair.
Wait, so it isn't just causing the mutations by binding to the DNA, it is simultaneously disarming the body's security system that would normally come in and fix the mutation.
Yes. It's an orchestrated two-front attack on cellular integrity.
That is terrifying. It fundamentally compromises the entire genome.
It does. And the epidemiological data reflects this breakdown perfectly. The statistic regarding breast cancer in the source material is particularly illuminating and, frankly, alarming.
Let's get into that.
Consuming just 1 to 6 drinks per week increases a woman's risk of breast cancer by 24%.
Okay, let's hold on that number for a second. 1 to 6 drinks a week.
Barely anything.
Right. In modern social dynamics, a person having 2 glasses of wine on a Friday and 1 on a Saturday would consider themselves a very light drinker.
Oh, absolutely. They would likely check the Warely box on a medical intake form.
Exactly. Yet that minimal exposure is enough to drive a 24% spike in breast cancer risk. How does such a small amount trigger such a massive statistical jump?
The breast cancer connection involves a dual mechanism. You have the direct DNA damage from the acetaldehyde that we just discussed.
Right, the adducts.
But alcohol also acts as an endocrine disruptor, specifically concerning estrogen.
Estrogen.
Yes. Remember how the liver is dropping its normal duties to process the alcohol?
Because it's fighting the fire.
Right. Well, one of the liver's normal daily duties is to metabolize and clear excess estrogen from the bloodstream.
Oh, I see where this is going. If the liver is busy fighting the acetaldehyde fire, the estrogen isn't being cleared.
Exactly. The estrogen clearance pathways become completely congested. Consequently, baseline estrogen levels in the blood rise.
And breast cancer is sensitive to that.
Very. Since many breast cancers are hormone receptor positive, meaning they literally use estrogen as fuel to grow, and multiply alcohol is essentially doing two things at once.
It's causing the initial DNA mutation that sparks the cancer cell.
Yes, and it is artificially raising the levels of the hormone that feeds the cancer's growth.
It plants the seed and then pours fertilizer on it.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And this brings me back to the staggering cognitive dissonance of our society.
How so?
Here's where it gets really interesting. You have entire industries, massive marketing campaigns, and even pink ribbon breast cancer awareness events that are heavily sponsored by alcohol brands.
The irony is, it's dark.
We treat smoking with extreme public health caution, right?
Right.
Yet alcohol, the number 3 cancer risk causing 70,000 cases annually, is celebrated. Why is there such a massive blind spot between public perception and this hard scientific reality?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, biology doesn't care about marketing. The human brain is incredibly adept at compartmentalizing risk when the immediate reward, like social inclusion or momentary relaxation, is high.
That makes sense. We prioritize the now over the later.
Exactly. And the alcohol industry spends billions of dollars to ensure that the association remains fixed purely on that reward. It completely obscures the biochemical reality of DNA adducts and compromised estrogen clearance.
But the rationalizations go even deeper than just social inclusion, don't they?
Oh, definitely.
Because if you confront someone with the cancer statistics or the liver data, a very common defense mechanism is to pivot to utility.
Right.
People will argue, look, I know the physical risks, but my anxiety is so high and my job is so demanding that a couple of drinks before bed is literally the only way I can actually shut my brain down and get to sleep.
I hear that all the time.
They view it as a necessary medical intervention for insomnia.
It is a deeply held belief, but biologically, it is one of the most destructive illusions surrounding alcohol.
Illusion.
Yes. The perception of falling asleep faster is entirely distinct from the neurological necessity of restorative sleep. What alcohol provides is sedation, not sleep.
Right, sedation versus sleep.
And the difference between those two states is profound.
Let's break down the neurochemistry of that sedation. Why does it feel like sleep, and what is actually happening in the brain when the lights go out?
Well, alcohol is a central nervous system depressant. It achieves this by interacting with two primary neurotransmitters. First is GABA, which is your brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter.
The brakes.
Right. And second is glutamate, which is your main excitatory neurotransmitter.
The gas pedal.
Exactly. Alcohol acts as an agonist to GABA, artificially amplifying its calming, sedating effects. Simultaneously, it acts as an antagonist to glutamate, suppressing the brain's natural excitability.
So it hits the neurological brakes and cuts the neurological gas at the exact same time.
Precisely.
Which is why you lose consciousness faster.
You lose consciousness, yes. But natural sleep is not merely a loss of consciousness. It is an incredibly active, highly orchestrated sequence of neurological stages.
It's not just an off switch.
Not at all. The two most critical stages for long-term health are REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, and slow-wave deep sleep. When you artificially induce unconsciousness with a massive spike in GABA, you completely destroy the architecture of those sleep cycles.
The source data points out that alcohol drastically reduces the time spent in both REM and slow-wave sleep. How does the chemical presence of alcohol physically block the brain from entering those specific stages?
The brain regulates sleep stages through precise, timed releases of neurochemicals, because alcohol artificially suppressed your glutamate levels.
A gas pedal.
Right. Your brain attempts to fight back and maintain homeostasis by upregulating glutamate production. It starts pumping out more excitatory chemicals to overcome the alcohol.
Oh, I see.
But a few hours into the night, as the liver finally metabolizes the alcohol and it leaves your brain, you suddenly lose the artificial GABA sedation.
But you are left with this massive compensatory surge of excitatory glutamate.
That is the rebound effect.
Yeah.
Your brain is suddenly flooded with excitatory neurotransmitters right in the middle of the night.
That sounds awful.
It is. This neurochemical chaos jolts you out of slow-wave sleep. It forces the brain into a lighter, fragmented state of sleep, or it wakes you up entirely.
The classic 3 a.m. wake up after drinking.
Exactly. You miss out on the deep, slow-wave sleep, which is the only time your body releases human growth hormone to repair physical tissue, clear out cellular waste, and restore the immune system.
So that explains the physical exhaustion the next day. But the disruption of REM sleep seems to have an even darker consequence for our cognitive longevity.
It really does.
What happens when the brain is chronically deprived of REM?
Well, REM sleep is the foundational bedrock of memory consolidation and emotional regulation. Throughout the day, your brain forms thousands of fragile, temporary neural connections based on what you learn, experience, and feel.
Okay.
During REM sleep, the brain essentially reviews all of this data. It strengthens the important connections, a process called synaptic plasticity, and it prunes away the irrelevant ones.
So if we lack REM, we lack that critical processing period. It's like writing a massive important document on a computer, but ripping the power cord out of the wall right as it's saving.
That's a great analogy.
So if I learn a complex new skill at work or navigate a difficult emotional conversation and then have a drink to celebrate that evening, am I literally preventing my brain from saving that new skill?
You are. You're actively inhibiting your own neuroplasticity And the compounding effect of this over years is devastating.
Over years? Yeah, I can't imagine.
The brain relies on the clearance of metabolic waste during deep sleep. Without it, neurotoxic proteins like amyloid beta begin to accumulate.
Amyloid beta, that's linked to Alzheimer's, isn't it?
It is. Furthermore, the chronic lack of REM and the continuous neuroinflammation lead to actual physical changes in the brain structure.
Which aligns with the most alarming statistic in the sleep section of the source material. The data states that long-term, moderate to heavy alcohol consumption accelerates brain atrophy.
It literally shrinks.
The physical volume of the brain shrinks, specifically in the frontal lobes and the hippocampus. And this lack of neurological repair translates to a 10% higher risk of developing dementia.
Yeah, the dementia risk is a direct downstream consequence of decades of compromised sleep architecture, unresolved neuroinflammation, and the toxic accumulation of those metabolic byproducts.
Wow.
When you sedate the brain, rather than letting it truly sleep, you are systematically eroding its structural integrity.
Okay, we need to take a step back and look at the sheer scale of the biological reality we've just mapped out.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. We are talking about a compound that paralyzes the endocrine hydration loop, causing 24-hour cognitive impairment.
Right.
It forces the liver to synthesize a highly reactive electron-stealing toxin that causes steatosis.
Yep.
That same toxin binds to our DNA, driving a 24% increase in breast cancer risk and contributing to 70,000 cancer cases annually.
The adducts.
And if that wasn't enough, it aggressively alters our neurochemistry, destroying the sleep architecture required to prevent brain atrophy and dementia.
The science is definitive.
It's brutal. So we have to ask the ultimate question. If the biological consequences are this severe, this undeniable, why is it so incredibly difficult for the vast majority of people to simply stop drinking it?
Because human behavior is rarely governed by biological optimization alone.
That's fair.
The friction of quitting doesn't primarily exist at the cellular level. It exists at the sociological level. We are dealing with a deeply ingrained cultural matrix.
A cultural matrix.
Yes, alcohol is intricately woven into the very fabric of human bonding, celebration, and social cohesion.
It is the default setting for almost every human interaction outside of the workplace.
Absolutely.
From the champagne toast at a wedding, to the beer at a baseball game, to the wine poured to console a friend after a breakup, we've artificially bound our emotional connection to the consumption of a neurotoxin.
Evolutionary psychology plays a massive role here, too.
Uh,
Humans are inherently tribal creatures. Our survival historically depended on remaining in the good graces of the group.
Right. If you get kicked out of the tribe, you don't survive.
Exactly. Participating in shared rituals is one of the primary ways we signal our allegiance and our safety to the tribe. When the universally agreed upon ritual involves consuming alcohol, choosing to abstain is subconsciously perceived by the group as a rejection of the shared ritual.
Which explains the interrogation.
Yes.
If you go to a dinner party and decline the wine, people don't just say, okay.
Never.
They demand a thesis defense. Choosing not to drink is often treated like showing up to a formal party in a Halloween costume. People demand an explanation.
That's exactly how it feels.
They want to know if you're sick, if you're pregnant, if you have a problem. Choosing foundational health over the group ritual creates instant social friction. You become the outgroup.
And it creates cognitive dissonance for the people still drinking.
Ah.
Deep down, most people possess some low-level awareness that alcohol is harmful. When you abstain, your presence acts as a mirror, forcing them to briefly confront their own habits.
Oh, wow.
Their defensive reaction, the questioning, the cajoling to just have one, is a mechanism to resolve their own dissonance by pulling you back into the shared behavior.
That is a massive psychological hurdle. How do you separate your own foundational health choices from the sheer gravity of everyone else's expectations? How do you rewrite your own internal code?
This raises an important question, and the source material suggests a fundamental paradigm shift. You must consciously recognize this social pressure not as an absolute reality, but as a constructed matrix.
Okay.
As long as you view quitting alcohol as a sacrifice, as giving up a core component of joy or social validity, you are relying entirely on willpower. And in the face of continuous cultural conditioning, willpower is finite. It will eventually deplete.
So you have to change the framing from deprivation to reclamation. You aren't losing the ability to numb yourself at a party. You are reclaiming your REM sleep, your metabolic function, and your baseline dopamine levels.
Yes, and that point on dopamine is crucial. Alcohol causes massive artificial spikes in dopamine, which is the molecule of motivation and reward.
Right.
Over time, The brain downregulates its own dopamine receptors to compensate for these artificial floods.
Mm.
This is why, for chronic drinkers, everyday activities, a walk outside, a good book, a simple conversation, no longer bring joy.
Because the baseline has been wrecked.
Exactly. Stepping away from alcohol is the only way to allow those dopamine receptors to reset, bringing genuine pleasure back to ordinary life.
So for the person listening to you right now who understands the biology, who sees the matrix for what it is and wants to reclaim their baseline,
Uh.
what is the actual roadmap?
Well, the data is surprisingly optimistic about the body's ability to recover.
It is.
Yes, the resilience of human biology is profound. The timeline for hepatic regeneration, which is the liver's ability to heal, is incredibly fast.
How fast?
Studies demonstrate that even in heavy drinkers, a period of complete abstinence for just 2 to 4 weeks allows the liver to significantly reduce intracellular fat deposits.
Wait, 2 to 4 weeks.
2 to 4 weeks. This steatosis begins to reverse. The liver cells, the hepatocytes, start regenerating and repairing the architecture that the acetaldehyde damaged.
2 to 4 weeks to start reversing a process that causes cirrhosis? That is an incredible return on investment for your body.
It really is. And within that same window, the neurochemistry begins to stabilize.
The brain heals, too.
Yes, the GABA and glutamate receptors begin to resensitize. The rebound effect disappears, and your sleep architecture naturally restores itself.
You start hitting the REM again.
You start hitting those deep, slow wave and REM cycles. The brain can finally clear out the metabolic waste and begin the process of neuroplasticity and memory consolidation without interference.
And what does that feel like?
The physical translation of this is a massive surge in daytime, natural energy, and a lifting of the baseline cognitive fog.
So what does this all mean for getting started? Because getting through those initial 2 to 4 weeks, especially when fighting the social matrix we talked about, requires strategy. Willpower isn't a strategy.
No, it's not.
The text highlights some really practical tactics, and one of the most powerful psychological reframes comes from an anecdote about Ed Milet's father,
Oh, I love this story.
who is recovering from alcoholism.
Right, because the psychological weight of the word forever is paralyzing.
Yes.
If you tell yourself you are never going to drink again, the brain perceives it as an insurmountable, infinite loss of a coping mechanism.
It's too big to process.
But the Milet anecdote brilliantly bypasses this. When asked if he would ever drink again, the father simply replied, "I don't know, son, but I know I'm not going to drink for one more day."
That's so powerful. It shrinks the battlefield.
Exactly.
You don't have to win the rest of your life today. You just have to win Tuesday. You just have to navigate one dinner or one stressor without the chemical intervention.
Just one more day.
And the tactics for navigating those specific moments heavily rely on environmental design and pre-commitment.
Because environmental design is vastly superior to willpower.
How so?
The brain is highly associative. If you always have a glass of wine while cooking dinner, the physical act of chopping vegetables will trigger the craving. The tactic is substitution. You don't leave a void. You replace the ritual.
So you swap the toxin for something benign, but you keep the physical habit.
Yes.
A mocktail, a non-alcoholic beer, sparkling water with lime. You are satisfying the behavioral loop, the act of sipping a specialized beverage to signal transition without introducing the acetaldehyde to your liver.
And you must pre-commit before entering high-risk social environments.
Setting boundaries in advance.
The decision of whether to drink cannot be made in the heat of the moment, surrounded by social pressure and environmental cues. It must be made in a calm, rational state beforehand.
It's like going grocery shopping with a strict list so you don't impulsively buy junk food.
Perfect analogy. You set the boundary, 0 drinks, and you cross the threshold of the event with that boundary firmly locked in place.
It's defensive architecture for your habit.
Exactly.
And if the environment is simply too toxic, if the only way your friend group connects is by sitting on bar stools for 6 hours, the roadmap requires shifting the environment entirely.
Yes, moving the point of connection from passive consumption to active engagement.
Like a morning hike or a fitness class or a board game night.
Right. You are forcing the social dynamic to rely on actual conversation and shared experience rather than shared sedation.
By doing so, you aren't just removing a negative variable from your health equation, you are actively building a richer, more energized life.
You begin to obsess over the positive gains. The clear skin resulting from proper hydration.
Yeah.
The razor-sharp memory because your REM sleep is intact.
Yeah.
The emotional stability because your dopamine baseline is no longer hijacked. The biology of healing becomes its own reinforcing reward system.
This has been a truly profound untangling of a very deeply rooted societal habit.
It really is a paradigm shift.
We started by looking at a culturally celebrated relaxant, and by simply observing the biochemistry, we exposed a highly disruptive neurotoxin.
We did.
We've mapped how it paralyzes our hydration loops, forces our liver to manufacture oxidative, cancer-causing byproducts, binds directly to our DNA, and systematically dismantles the sleep architecture necessary to keep our brains from atrophying.
And the overarching takeaway here is one of ultimate physiological empowerment.
Yes.
Your biology is remarkably forgiving, but it requires the proper environment to heal. Stepping away from alcohol is not a retreat from social joy. It is an aggressive, proactive reclamation of your cellular integrity, your cognitive longevity, and your fundamental well-being.
Exactly. You listening to this right now, you now possess the biological facts. You know that the marketing campaigns and the cultural momentum are masking a reality of DNA adducts and cognitive impairment.
The facts are all there.
So the next time you are faced with that societal pressure, the next time the Matrix tries to tell you that a chemically induced fog is the only way to find peace at the end of the day, I want you to ask yourself a very simple question.
But
Who is actually benefiting from your compliance to that narrative? And more importantly, what incredible untapped potential is waiting to be unlocked in your own mind and body the moment you decide to step out of the fog and write your own script?